Welcome back to our BookTube channel, everyone. Before we jump in today, please go ahead and hit that like button, comment your ideas down below as we go, and definitely subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. So, you know that feeling when you walk into a massive corporate lobby?
Oh, yeah, with the polished marble floors and the echoing footsteps.
Exactly. And there it is, usually mounted prominently right behind the reception desk, the plaque.
Yes, the brushed steel plaque etched with the company's, highest ideals. I mean, usually it's a list of virtues like integrity, quality, excellence, respect.
Yeah, and it always looks incredibly impressive.
Yeah.
But then you walk past that lobby, you take the elevator up to your department, you sit down at your desk, and you realize the actual rules of the corporate game are just completely different.
Right, it's like two totally separate realities.
It really is. The plaque is for show, but the day-to-day survival is messier, highly political, and honestly far less effective. So our mission today is to completely unpack a definitive roadmap designed to close that gap. We are taking a deep dive into the book Winning by Jack Welch, co-authored with Susie Welch.
And what makes this text so fascinating is its relentless focus on practical application. Like, it actively tries to rip that shiny plaque off the wall and replace it with a gritty, hyper-realistic blueprint for how business actually functions.
Right. And to describe this book fully for you, because I really want to capture its essence, this isn't just a collection of abstract ivory tower theories.
No, not at all.
It was actually born from thousands of questions the author received from people all over the globe after he retired. We're talking questions from factory line workers in Ohio, middle managers in Tokyo, and CEOs in London. It covers the absolute nitty-gritty of what it takes to succeed.
And the core argument is incredibly optimistic. It argues that winning is fundamentally great because winning companies create jobs, they secure people's futures, and they provide the tax revenue that builds highways, schools, and everything else that supports a functioning society.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are going to explore the core pillars of this book.
Yeah.
We'll get into the foundation of candor, the highly controversial practice of differentiation, the true mechanics of leadership, and the pretty harsh realities of work-life balance.
Which demands a massive mindset shift right out of the gate. You have to accept that business is a game, and to win that game, you have to embrace reality over corporate platitudes. Winning isn't about feeling warm and fuzzy.
Right, it's an economic engine.
Meh.
So to win, a company first needs to know where it's going and how to behave along the way. Which brings us back to the concept of that lobby, plaque, mission, and values.
Yeah, and the authors draw a very sharp line between those two concepts. A mission statement shouldn't just be a generic list of nice-sounding words. It has a single, highly specific job.
Which is answering one question, right?
Exactly. It must answer the question, how do we intend to win in this business? That is it. It defines the profitable direction of the company, and because of that, it must be set strictly by top management. They cannot delegate the mission.
But the values are different.
Right. Values are the specific day-to-day behaviors that get you to that destination. And unlike the mission, everyone in the company should have a voice in shaping those behaviors.
And the values have to be concrete, actionable things. I mean, they can't just be, we value customer service. They need to be actual directives like, we never let profit center conflicts get in the way of delivering for the customer.
Yes, otherwise they're just empty words on a wall.
The book gives some pretty terrifying examples of what happens when a company's mission suddenly disconnects from its established values. Like, the Arthur Andersen story is a massive warning sign.
Oh, it is the ultimate case study in cultural collapse. For decades, Arthur Andersen's mission was to be the most trusted auditing firm in the world. Their values aligned perfectly with that mission: meticulousness, extreme caution, and the courage to look a powerful client in the eye and say no if the math didn't add up.
But then the economic boom times hit, right? And top management decided they wanted a piece of the highly lucrative consulting market.
Exactly. So suddenly, you have these traditional, highly cautious accountants sharing an elevator with aggressive, fast-moving MBA consultants whose entire value system is based on upselling clients and maximizing billable hours.
Which is just a recipe for disaster. The firm was essentially at war with itself. The new mission was chasing consulting money, but they never redefined the foundational values to reconcile these wildly different cultures.
And that same dynamic destroyed Enron. They transitioned from being a relatively boring, highly functional natural gas pipeline company to an aggressive, high-stakes energy trading company.
Yeah, they put the traders in charge and entirely lost the behavioral checks and balances that had kept them grounded.
Yeah.
That disconnect literally destroyed both of those massive companies.
It did. So a company needs a clear mission and actionable values. But the glue that holds them together, what the book calls the biggest dirty little secret in business, is the lack of candor.
Candor. I feel like this is where the book really starts pulling no punches.
Oh, definitely. Candor is the missing ingredient in almost every failing corporate culture. A lack of candor blocks smart ideas, it slows down action, and it prevents good people from contributing.
Because people hoard information, right? They sugarcoat bad news to appease their managers, or they just stay quiet in meetings to maintain a polite, comfortable status quo.
Exactly.
Okay, but wait, we are socialized from childhood to soften bad news and be polite. If I go into the office tomorrow and just start telling everyone exactly what I think of their ideas with brutal honesty, I'm not going to generate speed. I'm going to get a fast-track meeting with HR.
Yeah, that's the common fear.
Like, the book even features this anecdote about a suburban cocktail party, right? Where a guest complains about how stressed a local music teacher is.
Oh, well, that's a great example.
Everyone makes polite noises of sympathy until another guest chimes in, points out a doctor in the group who makes literal life-and-death decisions, and loudly notes the teacher gets 15 weeks off a year. It just completely kills the polite chit-chat. So isn't this intense level of candor just an excuse to be a jerk in the workplace?
What's fascinating here is that the authors actually reference the philosopher Immanuel Kant to dismantle that exact concern. We tell ourselves that softening the truth or withholding our real opinions is an act of kindness.
Right, like we're protecting them.
Exactly. We convince ourselves we are protecting the other person's feelings by not tearing down their bad idea. But Kant argued, and the book applies this directly to business, that avoiding candor is actually about pure self-interest.
So by being polite, I'm actually just being selfish. How does that even work?
Well, think about the mechanics of telling someone a hard truth. If you tell a colleague their project is failing, you risk creating an emotional mess. You risk anger, tears, deep resentment.
And nobody wants to deal with that on a Tuesday morning.
Right. Because if you cause that mess, you have to do the hard work of sitting there and cleaning it up. It is infinitely easier for you to just nod, smile, and let them fail quietly.
Wow. So withholding candor isn't kindness. It's just you making your own life easier.
Exactly. In business, that false politeness is toxic. Candor generates speed because everyone is actually debating the real issues instead of dancing around them. It massively cuts costs because it eliminates those endless, meaningless meetings.
You know, the ones where everyone just reads off sanitized PowerPoint slides, tells each other how great they're doing, and then goes out into the hallway to whisper about what's actually broken.
Yes, the hallway conversations.
That makes total sense when you frame it like that. The goal is to bring the hallway conversation into the boardroom. But if an organization actually achieves that level of brutal honesty, they have to apply it to how they evaluate their people.
They do. You can't be candid and treat everyone exactly the same.
Right? You can't demand intense candor about the business strategy and then give every single employee a generic meets expectations on their performance review. Which brings us to arguably the most aggressive policy in the book, differentiation.
Also known as the 20-70-10 rule. This is basically the structural hardware of how you manage a candid workforce. You assess your employees and rigidly separate them into 3 categories.
So the top 20% are your stars, right?
Yes, the undeniable high-impact players. They get showered with awards bonuses, stock options, public praise. Then the middle 70% are the heart and soul of the company.
One's keeping the lights on.
Exactly. They require intense training, thoughtful goal setting, and continuous motivation to keep them engaged and potentially push them up into that top 20.
And then there's the bottom 10%. And, the book is completely unflinching about this group. They must go. They have to be fired every single year.
Yeah, the authors use a playground baseball analogy to explain the logic. When kids pick teams, the absolute best players get picked first. The average players go to the outfield, and the least athletic kids sit out.
Which sounds harsh.
It does, but eventually those kids go find another pursuit, maybe the school band or the debate team, where they might actually have a natural aptitude and excel.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. You read that, and you immediately think of the human toll. Like the book mentions a woman who called into a radio show completely outraged, calling this system cruel and Darwinian.
And it's hard not to sympathize with her on some level.
It really is. Because if I know I have to constantly outcompete the person at the desk next to me just to stay out of the bottom 10% and keep my livelihood, I am never going to help them. I'm going to hoard my contacts, hide my strategies, and actively sabotage them to protect myself. How does this not instantly destroy teamwork?
That is definitely the most common fear associated with the 2070-10 rule that it creates like a corporate Hunger Games. But the authors counter that fear by looking at the mechanics of elite sports, specifically using the New York Yankees as an analogy.
Okay, how so?
Well, think about Joe Torre managing the Yankees during their dynasty years. He managed a highly differentiated team. You had star players making $18 million a year and rookies sitting on the bench making the league minimum of $300,000.
Right, and the salaries are literally printed in the newspaper for everyone to see.
Exactly. The financial gap is staggering, and everyone knows exactly who the favorites are. Yet, does that disparity destroy teamwork? No. Those bench players and those megastars will still dive face first into the stands to catch a foul ball, risking their own bodies.
Because they want the team to win the World Series.
Precisely. The financial differentiation doesn't stop them from collaborating because the rewards of a team championship, the prestige, the rings, the collective bonuses, lift everyone. The book argues that differentiation is actually the kindest and fairest system because it operates just like the grading system we use to develop children.
But wait, we stop grading people the minute they graduate.
Which is the core absurdity the book points out. We spend our entire youth getting graded so we can figure out our strengths and weaknesses. It builds self-awareness. But somehow, at age 21, the grades stop, and the corporate world starts handing out participation trophies.
So they're saying protecting an underperforming employee for years is the truly cruel act.
Exactly, giving them fake praise, keeping them in a job they are objectively bad at, only to finally lay them off during a recession when they are 55 years old and have no other skills. That is corporate cruelty. Differentiation forces truth early, allowing that bottom 10% to go find a career where they can actually thrive.
It's a harsh medicine designed to cure the disease of false politeness, but executing a system that intense, actually looking someone in the eye and categorizing them, requires a very specific type of leader who actually has the stomach to implement this.
It takes a unique profile, for sure.
Yeah, how do you even identify these winners in the hiring process before you put them in charge?
The book outlines a highly specific hiring framework called the 4 E's and 1 P. It's designed to filter out people who look good on paper, but lack the internal drive to manage a candid culture.
Let's walk through those mechanics. The first E is energy. And this isn't just about like drinking a lot of coffee, right?
Yeah.
It's a natural positive vitality. They thrive on action.
Right. They wake up ready to tackle problems.
Yeah.
The second E is the ability to energize others.
Yeah.
Because it's not enough to be a solo powerhouse. You have to be able to walk into a room on a rainy Tuesday and inspire your team to take the hill with you.
And the third E is edge, which is basically the courage to make tough yes or no calls. No waffling, no endless studying of options, no hiding behind committees.
Yes. And the fourth E is execute. You have to actually get the job over the finish line, pushing through all the friction.
And what about that final P?
The P is passion, an authentic, deep excitement for the work itself and for seeing colleagues succeed. If a candidate has those traits, they have the raw material. But finding those traits requires a totally different kind of interview.
Like you don't just ask where they went to school.
No, you ask them to describe a time they had to kill a beloved project that tests their edge. You ask them to explain a complex problem to you, to see if they have the energy to make it compelling.
Makes sense. But beyond just hiring, the book makes a profound point about the psychological shift that must happen the day someone actually gets the promotion to leadership. Before you're a leader, success is entirely about growing yourself, your skills, your output.
But the moment you become a leader, success is entirely about growing others. You essentially become a chief meaning officer. You have to constantly communicate the company's vision until you are literally sick of hearing yourself say it.
Because it might be the first time an employee on the front line is actually absorbing it. But, there's a massive paradox in these leadership rules that feels sort of impossible to navigate.
What do you mean?
Well, the book says a leader must exude relentless positive energy and optimism. You have to be the ultimate cheerleader. But simultaneously, it says a leader must constantly probe and question their team with a curiosity that borders on skepticism. How can you be their biggest fan and their harshest interrogator at the exact same time?
This raises an important question about the daily reality of management. Performing those daily conflicting balancing acts is the actual job of leadership. You have to project total confidence in the mission while constantly questioning the methods used to get there.
Which sounds exhausting.
It is. And a great leader must also be incredibly comfortable looking like the dumbest person in the room.
Just by constantly asking why and what if, over and over.
Yes. Imagine sitting in on a product presentation. The weak leader nods, claps, and tries to look smart. The strong leader asks why it's priced that way, why they didn't target a different demographic, and what happens if a competitor drops their prices by 20% tomorrow.
I can see how that would feel abrasive to the team initially.
It can. But when that intense skepticism is paired with genuine, daily positive energy, the team realizes you aren't attacking their competence. You are stress testing their ideas to make them bulletproof.
And crucially, when the team pushes through that stress test and succeeds, the leader must celebrate. I noticed the authors explicitly note that managers strangely avoid throwing parties or handing out spontaneous rewards.
Because they think it looks unprofessional or frivolous. But celebrating is the mechanical engine for building team momentum. It proves that the hard work actually pays off.
It's like a great sports coach. You run them ragged in practice, questioning every single play, pushing them to their physical limits, but when they win the championship, you are the first one in the locker room pouring the champagne.
Exactly. You have to own both extremes.
But if we step back and look at the reality of this, bringing this much energy, edge, and execution to the office demands 150% of your mental and physical capacity. But your home life, your kids, your personal hobbies, they also demand 150%.
They absolutely do.
So if a company is running this fast, what happens to the human being at the center of it? How does a system this intense account for work-life balance?
The book takes a very tough love stance on this that really challenges modern conventional wisdom. They argue that work-life balance is your problem to solve. It is not your boss's problem.
Wow, that is a very tough pill to swallow today. We hear so much about companies needing to provide wellness programs and mandated time off.
It is tough. But the authors argue you have to look at the mechanics of the market. Your boss's top priority, their very reason for being in that chair, is the competitiveness of the company. They want you to be happy, sure, but only insofar as your happiness allows you to help the company win.
So how do you actually achieve balance then? The book outlines what it calls the CHIT system.
Yes.
When I was going through the source material, I couldn't help but picture, like, an arcade. The CHIT system basically says that flexibility at work isn't a human right. It's a currency that has to be earned by delivering outstanding performance.
That's a great analogy.
You only get the prize of flexibility, say, leaving at 3 p.m. on a Friday to see your kid's soccer game, if you win enough tickets by outperforming everyone else. Doesn't that mean only the elite top 20% ever get to actually see their families?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of global competition, the authors point out a pretty harsh truth. Your competitors in emerging economies, an entrepreneur in Shenzhen or a startup founder in Bangalore, are not decreasing their productivity in the name of balance. They are working relentlessly to take your market share.
So a company just can't mandate sweeping one-size-fits-all work-life balance policies without losing its edge.
Exactly. You don't have to work 80 hours a week forever, but you do have to earn the leverage to negotiate your schedule. High performers achieve balance by building what the book calls home processes, robust backup plans, support systems, and ironclad schedules.
And it requires the mettle to say no. Like, you can't sit on 3 nonprofit boards, coach a travel little league team, train for a marathon, and be a top-tier executive. You have to make strict trade-offs.
You really do.
There is this deeply resonant line in the book about how you have to ensure your chosen balance plan actually leaves room for your own joy. Because if you perfectly balance your boss's intense demands and your family's intense demands, but leave absolutely no time for yourself, you end up in a special kind of hell where everyone around you is perfectly happy, but you are completely miserable.
It all comes down to personal responsibility. The company is an economic engine. It is not going to save you. You have to save yourself by performing well enough to earn leverage and then actively using that leverage to architect a life that works for you.
And what happens when things go completely off the rails despite all this? The book dedicates an entire section to crisis management, which feels inevitable in a culture moving this fast.
It is inevitable. The book lays out 5 brutal assumptions you have to make the second a crisis hits, because the mechanics of a crisis are incredibly predictable.
What's the first one?
The first assumption is that the problem is always worse than it appears on the surface because human nature is to hide the ugliest parts of a failure.
Oh, absolutely. And the second is that there are no secrets in the modern world, right? Every email, every bad decision will eventually see the light of day.
Exactly. Third, you have to assume the media and the public will portray your company in the absolute worst possible light.
Because it's their job to find the friction, not to act as your PR department.
Precisely. The fourth assumption is that there will be changes in processes and there will be blood on the floor, meaning people will be fired. A real structural crisis never just fades away quietly. Fixing it demands removing the architects of the failure.
And the fifth assumption.
The fifth is that the organization will eventually survive and emerge stronger, but only if you face the first four assumptions with absolute, uncompromising candor.
So it all circles right back to candor. If you try to spin the crisis, you die. If you face it, you survive. So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Winning provides a concrete, sometimes deeply uncomfortable, but highly effective roadmap. It requires brutal honesty about the mission.
It requires clear differentiation between stars and stragglers.
It demands leaders who relentlessly execute while actually celebrating the wins. And it requires individuals who take total, unapologetic ownership of their own career and life choices.
It forces you to decide if you want to step onto the field and play the game to win. But, there is a final macro-level thought worth mulling over.
Oh, I like where this is going. What is it?
Well, the authors argue passionately that winning companies are the fundamental engine of society, right? Providing the taxes, jobs, and philanthropy that keep the world running. But consider the broader societal implications of that 20-70-10 differentiation model. If every single company in the world adopted this strict model, constantly culling their bottom 10% every single year, what happens to the macroeconomic landscape?
Wow. It basically turns the entire job market into a game of musical chairs, where they keep taking away a chair, but nobody is ever allowed to leave the room.
Exactly. Does a society entirely optimized for top-tier corporate winning leave any room for late bloomers? Or does a universal, relentless 20-70-10 rule risk creating a permanent, disenfranchised class of the bottom 10% who are just constantly cycled out of the economy, moving from bottom tier to bottom tier?
That is a fascinating friction point between hyper-efficient corporate performance and long-term societal stability.
It really is something to think about.
It's a heavy question to chew on as you evaluate your own career path. Next time you walk into that marble lobby and look up at that brushed steel plaque, ask yourself, what is the actual game being played in this building? And do I have the energy, the edge, and the candor to win it? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.